The sky was dark with heavy clouds, and the sound of thunder rolled across the small town. Rain poured down without mercy, turning the narrow streets into rivers of muddy water. The wind pushed against old rooftops and rattled the weak doors of the houses that lined the road. In one of those small houses lived Arif, a poor man with tired eyes and strong hands. His shirt was worn and his trousers were patched in many places. He worked hard every day to feed his wife and 2 children, but even then it was never enough. His home had only 2 small rooms with a roof that leaked whenever rain came. Arif was not a man who complained. He accepted his life with patience, but his heart was heavy every time he saw his children, Mariam and Bilal, go to bed hungry. Mariam was 10 years old with curious eyes and a mind full of questions. Bilal was 6, playful but often weak because he did not eat enough. Their mother, Amina, did her best to keep the house clean and warm, though she too worried every day about food and money. That evening, as rain hit the roof like falling stones, Amina looked at her husband. "We have only a little rice left," she said quietly. "Tomorrow there will be nothing." Arif nodded slowly. He had heard those words many times before. "I will find work tomorrow," he promised, though he did not know what kind of work would come. After the children fell asleep, Arif stepped outside. He pulled his old coat tighter around his shoulders, though it did little to protect him from the cold rain. He wanted fresh air to clear his mind, but the storm only reminded him of how hard life was. He walked along the muddy road, his shoes soaking with water, his thoughts heavy with worry. As he reached the corner of the road that led to the main street, he saw something unusual. A black car stood by the side of the road, its headlights dim in the rain. The hood was open and a man stood there, struggling with something inside the engine. The man wore a coat, but his polished shoes and the shine of his watch told Arif that he was from a different world. He was clearly wealthy, but now he was helpless in the storm. Arif stopped for a moment. His first thought was to keep walking. After all, what could a poor man like him do for someone like that? But then he saw the man's frustration, the way the rain poured down on him, soaking his clothes as he tried again and again to start the car. Arif's heart softened. He could not walk away when someone needed help, no matter who it was. He stepped closer and called out over the sound of rain. "Do you need help, sir?" The man turned quickly, surprised. His face showed both relief and caution. "Yes, I think something is wrong with the engine. The car will not start." Arif walked over, his hands steady though his clothes dripped with water. He looked inside the engine, noticing a loose cable and some water that had leaked in. He asked the man to hold the torchlight steady while he worked. His fingers moved quickly, tightening, cleaning, and checking. He had no training, but years of fixing broken things in his home and for neighbors had taught him many skills. After a few minutes, he asked the man to try again. The man sat in the driver's seat and turned the key. The car coughed, then roared to life. The headlights shone brighter, and the sound of the engine filled the rainy night. The man stepped out, his face full of gratitude. "You did it," he said with a smile. "I was stuck here for more than an hour. No one stopped to help me, but you did. Thank you." Arif gave a small smile. "It was nothing, sir. I only did what I could." The man reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He took out a few large notes and offered them to Arif. "Please take this. You saved me tonight." Arif looked at the money but shook his head slowly. "No, sir. I cannot take this. I only helped because it was the right thing to do." "You do not need to pay me." The man's eyes widened. He was not used to such honesty. In his world, everything had a price and everyone expected something in return. But this poor man, dripping wet in the rain, was refusing money he clearly needed. "What is your name?" the man asked. "Arif," he replied softly. "I am Kamran," the man said, extending his hand. Arif shook it politely. Kamran studied him for a moment as if trying to understand him better. Then he said, "At least let me give you a ride home. The rain is too heavy for you to walk." Arif shook his head again. "Thank you, but my house is near. I can walk." Kamran looked at him with respect. "Very well, but I hope we meet again." With that, Kamran got into his car and drove away, the headlights disappearing into the storm. Arif stood there for a moment, watching, then turned back toward his small house. His clothes were wet, his shoes heavy, but inside his heart was a quiet peace. He had done the right thing. When he returned home, Amina asked what had taken him so long. He told her about the car, about the man, about the money he had refused. She looked at him with both pride and worry. "You are a good man, Arif," she said. "But sometimes I fear your kindness will keep us poor." Arif smiled sadly. "If I take money without earning it, it will not bring us peace. One day our honesty will bring us something better." That night, as the storm raged outside, Arif lay awake, thinking of the man he had helped. He did not know that this small act of kindness would change his life forever. The rain slowed by the time Arif reached the small street that led to his house. His clothes were heavy, water dripping from every thread, but he did not mind. His heart was calm. Helping the stranger had reminded him of something he always believed. Kindness mattered more than money. His little house stood at the end of a narrow lane. Its walls were old and the roof leaked whenever the rain was strong. Yet inside, two small children waited for him with bright eyes. When Arif opened the door, the children rushed forward. His daughter Mariam, just 7 years old, hugged his legs tightly. His son Bilal, only 5, looked up at him with excitement. "Baba, you are late today," Mariam said. "We waited and waited." Arif bent down and kissed both of them on their foreheads. His tired face softened as he smiled at them. "I am here now," he said gently. "Were you good while I was away?" Both children nodded quickly. Their eyes searched his hands, and Mariam asked, "Did you bring bread?" Arif opened his bag and took out a small packet. It was not much, only bread and a little milk, but to his children it felt like a feast. They clapped their hands with joy. He sat with them on the thin carpet as they ate, watching their small hands tear pieces of bread, their happy faces glowing even in the dim light of the room. Their laughter filled the small house, and for a while Arif forgot his own hunger, his wet clothes, and his tired body. Watching them eat with such joy was enough for him. His wife, Amina, came from the kitchen, carrying a small cup of tea she had saved for him. Her eyes, tired but kind, met his. She did not need to ask about his day. She could see in his face that he had struggled, yet she could also see a quiet pride in his eyes. That night, when the children were asleep, Amina sat beside him and asked softly, "Why were you late?" Arif told her about the stranger and the broken car. He told her how he had fixed it and how the man had tried to give him money. Amina listened carefully, her hands resting in her lap. When he finished, she sighed gently. "You refused the money?" she asked. "Yes," Arif said, "because it did not feel right to take it." He was in trouble. "I only did what I should do." Amina looked at him with love and also with concern. She knew his heart was pure, but she also knew how much they struggled. Many times she had worried about the next meal, the school fees, the leaking roof. She wanted to say that maybe he should have taken the money, but she held back. She respected him too much to make him feel guilty for doing what he felt was right. Instead, she said softly, "Allah sees your kindness. Maybe one day it will return to us in another way." Arif nodded, his eyes closing from exhaustion. "That is enough for me," he whispered. The next morning, life returned to its routine. Arif woke before sunrise, prayed quietly, and prepared for another long day. He kissed his children before leaving, promising Mariam he would try to bring her a pencil and notebook she had asked for. Then he stepped out into the cool morning air. He walked to the market where he often found small jobs. Sometimes he carried heavy sacks for shopkeepers, sometimes he cleaned, sometimes he repaired things. The pay was always little, but it was all he had. That day was no different. He worked for hours, his back aching, his hands sore. Still, he never complained. As the sun set, he began his walk home again. His shoes splashed in the puddles left from yesterday's rain. He thought of his children, their laughter, their hunger, their innocence. They were his strength. But on this evening, something unusual happened. As he turned into his narrow lane, he noticed people standing outside their houses, whispering and pointing. A shiny car stood at the end of the street. It was the kind of car that almost never came into such a poor neighborhood. Its surface shone in the fading light, and its engine purred softly. Arif slowed his steps. The car's door opened, and to his surprise, the same stranger from the rainy night stepped out. He was dressed in another fine suit, his shoes polished, his face calm but serious. The neighbors stared in silence, curious about why such a man would come here. The stranger looked around, then his eyes fell on Arif. A smile touched his lips, and he walked forward. "I was looking for you," he said warmly. Arif was shocked. "For me?" he asked. "Yes," the man replied. "Do you remember me?" "My car broke down last night. You fixed it?" Arif nodded slowly. "I remember. I am glad you reached home safely." The stranger stepped closer and extended his hand. "My name is Kamran," he introduced himself. "I wanted to thank you again. What you did for me yesterday was more than just fixing a car. It reminded me that kindness still exists." Arif shook his hand hesitantly. His neighbors whispered louder, watching the scene with wide eyes. Kamran continued, "I could not stop thinking about you last night. A poor man, soaked in rain, refusing money just because he believed kindness should be free. I respect that more than I can explain." Arif shifted uneasily. Praise was not something he was used to. He lowered his gaze and said, "I only did what I thought was right." Kamran smiled. "And that is exactly why I came here. I want to know more about you, about your family, about your life. May I come inside?" Arif was speechless for a moment. He looked at his small house, its broken walls, the roof patched with old sheets. He felt shy, almost ashamed to invite a rich man into such a place. But Amina came to the door, her scarf neatly tied, her eyes welcoming. She stepped forward and said softly, "Please come in." Kamran entered, his polished shoes stepping on the worn carpet. He looked around, noticing the small room, the simple furniture, the children's drawings on the wall. Nothing in the house showed wealth, but everything showed love. Mariam and Bilal peeked shyly from behind their mother. Kamran smiled at them, and they quickly hid again, giggling. Arif offered him a seat and poured a cup of tea, even though it was the last they had. Kamran accepted it with gratitude. He sat for a long time talking with Arif, asking about his work, his struggles, his dreams. Arif answered honestly, without complaint, only with patience. The evening stretched on, and when Kamran finally stood to leave, he looked at Arif with deep respect. "You are an honest man," he said firmly. "I want to see you again. Tomorrow, can you meet me at my office in the city?" Arif was stunned. "Your office?" "Yes," Kamran said with a smile. "I have something important to discuss with you." Arif did not know what to say. He simply nodded, his heart unsure but curious. When the car drove away, the neighbors surrounded Arif with questions, but he only smiled faintly and went inside. Amina looked at him with hopeful eyes. "What does he want?" she asked. Arif shook his head. "I don't know," he said quietly. "But maybe this is the beginning of something we never expected." That night Arif lay awake, listening to the soft breathing of his children. His mind replayed the meeting again and again. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in many years, he felt a small flame of hope burning in his heart. The rain did not stop that evening. It fell harder and harder, as if the sky wanted to test everyone walking under it. Arif stood still for a moment when he saw the black car on the side of the road. Its lights were on. The wipers moved back and forth, but the car did not move. A man stood near the hood, his hands helpless in the cold rain. Arif could tell that the man was not used to such problems. His shoes and clothes looked expensive, his hair neat even though the rain was wetting it. Arif felt his own wet shirt sticking to his body. His stomach was empty, but his heart was not empty. He knew what it was like to be stuck with no help. He remembered the many times his old bicycle broke down when he was late for work. Nobody stopped to help him then. Some only looked, some just passed by. But he had learned to manage alone. Still, he had never stopped hoping that one day someone would help him when he was in need. Now, in front of him was a chance. A stranger was in trouble. Arif thought of his children waiting at home, thought of the bread he wanted to buy, thought of how tired his body already was. Yet his heart told him to step forward. He walked closer and called out in a humble voice, "Do you need help, sir?" The stranger looked at him surprised. For a moment the man seemed unsure if Arif could really be of any use. The stranger's face was tired, his eyes restless, and his hands were wet and shaking from the cold. "Yes, the car just stopped," the man said. "I tried to start it again, but it does not work. And there is no phone signal here." "I don't know what to do," Arif nodded. He did not say much. He walked straight to the hood of the car and asked softly, "May I look at it?" The man hesitated, then stepped aside. Arif lifted the hood and leaned forward. The smell of wet metal and engine oil rose into the air. His fingers, rough and cracked from years of labor, touched the wires and pipes with careful movements. Memories came back to him of the small workshop where he once worked as a boy. He had left that job long ago when the workshop closed, but his hands had not forgotten the feel of tools and machines. The rain poured down his back, soaking him completely, but he did not stop. His shirt clung to his thin frame, yet his eyes focused on the engine as if nothing else existed. The stranger watched silently. After some minutes, Arif asked, "Can you try the key now?" The man went inside and turned the key. The engine coughed but did not start. Arif bent lower, adjusted a loose wire, tightened a small connection with his bare hands, and called again. "Please, try once more." This time the car shook and then came to life. The deep sound of the engine filled the rainy night. The stranger's face lit up with relief. He quickly stepped out, his shoes splashing in the puddles, and looked at Arif with surprise. "You did it," the man said. "I cannot believe it. I tried so many times and it just would not start." "How did you know?" Arif gave a small smile, the kind of smile that showed kindness but also shyness. "I used to work in a small workshop. I know a little about engines. It was just a loose wire." The man looked at Arif again, this time with more respect. He noticed the torn shoes, the worn-out coat, the tired face of the man who had just helped him. He could see that Arif himself was not in an easy life, yet he had stopped in the rain without hesitation. The stranger reached into his pocket and pulled out some money. "Please take this. You saved me tonight. Without you, I don't know how I would have managed." Arif looked at the money but shook his head gently. "No, sir. I only did what anyone should do. I don't want money for this." The man was surprised. Most people would have taken the money at once, yet this poor man refused. "But why?" he asked. "You worked hard in the rain. You must take something for it." Arif's eyes softened. "Because kindness should not be sold. If my children were stuck like this one day, I would pray that someone helped them too. That is enough for me." The stranger was silent for a while. He stared at Arif, almost unable to believe such words. The rain still poured, but in that moment it felt like the noise of the world had gone quiet. The stranger felt a warmth in his chest, a kind of respect he had not felt in a long time. Arif closed the hood, wiped his wet hands on his shirt, and picked up his old bag from the ground. "Your car should be fine now," he said simply. "Drive safe. The road ahead is slippery." With that, he turned to leave. The man stood watching him as he walked away slowly into the rain, his figure shrinking in the distance, the bag hanging from his shoulder, his steps heavy but steady. The stranger, still holding the money in his hand, felt something he could not explain. He had met many people in his life. He had worked with businessmen, leaders, and rich men who spoke with power. But this poor man in one simple act had shown more strength and honesty than all of them. As Arif walked away, his mind was not on the car anymore. He thought of his children again. He thought of how they would smile when he entered the door, even if his clothes were wet and his hands were cold. He thought of how they would run to him, asking what he had brought and how he would hand them the bread he hoped to buy. That thought gave him peace. The stranger got into his car, the engine steady now, and sat still for a long moment. He wanted to call out, to stop the man, to ask him something more, but Arif was already gone into the rain. The road was empty once again, but in the stranger's heart, something had changed. The morning sun rose slowly over the city, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and gold. Arif stood in front of the mirror, combing his hair with care. His clothes were the same old shirt and trousers he wore every day, but today he brushed them carefully, making sure they were as neat as possible. His wife Amina watched him quietly from the corner of the room. She knew he was nervous. "Do not worry," she said gently. "Just be yourself. That man must have seen something in you, otherwise he would not have asked you to meet him." Arif nodded but said nothing. His heart beat fast. He had never been inside a rich office, never spoken with men who wore suits and carried briefcases. He was only a poor laborer, a man who carried sacks in the market and repaired broken things when he was lucky enough to find such work. Why would a man like Kamran call him to his office? After kissing his children goodbye, Arif stepped out. His walk to the bus stop was slow, his thoughts heavy. When he reached the city, the tall buildings made him feel small. He looked around, unsure of where to go, until he found the address Kamran had written for him. The building was tall, its glass windows shining in the sun. People in clean clothes and polished shoes moved in and out quickly, holding files and talking into phones. Arif felt out of place as he entered, his worn shoes squeaking on the polished floor. A guard at the door asked his name, and when Arif said he was expected, the guard directed him to the top floor. Inside, everything smelled of fresh paint and new furniture. The air was cool from the machines that hummed quietly above. Arif's hands shook slightly as he pressed the elevator button. When the doors opened at the top floor, Cameron himself was waiting there with a warm smile. "You came," Cameron said, stepping forward and shaking his hand. "I am glad." Arif bowed his head politely. "Thank you for inviting me." Cameron led him into a large office with tall windows overlooking the city. The floor was covered with thick carpet, and the desk was wide and clean. On the walls hung pictures of factories, workers, and awards. Arif looked around silently, amazed at the difference between this world and his own small house. "Please sit," Cameron said, pointing to a chair. "I wanted to talk to you properly without rain and noise around us." Arif sat carefully, still unsure why he had been called. Cameron leaned forward, his voice calm. "Last night when I met you, I saw something I rarely see in people these days. You helped me without asking for anything. You refused money when you clearly needed it. That kind of honesty and kindness is rare. It stayed in my mind all night." Arif looked down, embarrassed. "I only did what I felt was right," he said softly. "That is exactly why I want to do something for you," Cameron replied. "I own a company that builds machines and supplies parts to many factories. I need people I can trust. I need men who work with honesty, not only with skill. And I believe you are one of those men." Arif's eyes widened. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. "But sir," he said slowly, "I am not educated. I cannot read well. I have no training except small jobs. How can I work in your company?" Cameron smiled. "You do not need a degree to show honesty. You need only your heart and your hands. I can teach you what you need to know. What matters to me is your character, and you already proved that you have it." Arif's throat tightened. He thought of his children, of the nights when they had gone to sleep hungry, of the mornings when he worried about finding work. He thought of Miriam asking for a pencil and notebook. Could this really be the answer to his silent prayers? Still, his humble nature made him cautious. "I will do anything you ask, sir," he said, "but I cannot promise I will be as good as the others." "You will learn," Cameron said firmly. "I will give you a chance. If you work hard, you can grow in my company. You will have a steady income and your family will not have to suffer as they do now." Tears welled in Arif's eyes, though he quickly blinked them away. He did not want to cry in front of this man. He bowed his head. "Thank you, sir. You are very kind." Cameron stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, Arif, you are the one who is kind. I am only giving you what you deserve." For the first time in many years, Arif felt hope bloom inside him like a light in darkness. He left the office that day with papers in his hand and a promise in his heart. When he returned home, his children ran to him as always, but this time his smile was brighter. Amina saw it at once. "Something happened," she said quickly. Arif gathered them close and told them everything. He told them about the job, about the chance, about the faith that Cameron had placed in him. Amina covered her mouth with her hands, tears shining in her eyes. Miriam clapped with joy, and Bilal hugged his father tightly. For the first time, Arif felt he could dream of more than just surviving. He could imagine sending his children to school without fear of fees. He could imagine repairing the roof, buying better clothes, maybe even a small table where they could eat together. That night, the little house was filled with laughter and hope. Amina made a simple meal, but it tasted better than any feast. They ate together, and for once Arif did not feel the heavy weight of tomorrow pressing down on him. In his heart, he knew that his life had begun to change. And it had all started with one choice on a rainy night, to stop and help a stranger. Arif's first day at Cameron's company began early. The sun had just risen and the streets of the city were busy with people rushing to work. Arif adjusted his worn shirt as best as he could, though it could not compare to the polished uniforms of the other employees. He walked carefully into the building, still feeling small among the tall, busy men. When he reached Cameron's office, the man greeted him with a smile. "Welcome, Arif," he said warmly. "Today you will see the work and meet the team. Do not worry. I will guide you." Arif nodded, feeling both nervous and excited. He followed Cameron through the long hallways, noticing the clean floors, the neatly arranged offices, and the many workers typing on computers or checking machines. Everything was new to him. His mind was full of questions. Could he really do this? Would the others accept him? Cameron led him to a small workshop inside the office building. It was filled with machines, tools, and parts of all shapes and sizes. Some workers were repairing machines, others assembling small parts. Arif's eyes widened. He had worked with tools before, but never in such a big place. Do not worry, Kamran said. Start with small tasks. Learn slowly. I know you can do it. Arif nodded and approached the first machine. A man named Imran introduced himself as his guide. Don't be afraid, Imran said kindly. We all start somewhere. Just follow my instructions. For the next few hours, Arif worked carefully, using his hands to fix small parts, learning how the machines worked and paying close attention to every detail. He made mistakes, but he learned from them. Each time he completed a task, Kamran would come by and smile. Good work, he would say. Keep going. By the end of the first week, Arif had begun to feel comfortable in the workshop. He learned to operate the machines, to assemble parts, and even to notice small problems before they became bigger. Kamran often visited, asking questions, giving advice, and encouraging him. At home, things began to change as well. With Arif's new job, they could afford better food. Mariam and Bilal could buy books and pencils for school. Amina was able to fix some of the leaks in the roof and even plant a small garden outside. The children's laughter filled the house more than ever. Arif often watched them, his heart full of gratitude and pride. One evening, as the family sat together after dinner, Mariam looked up at him. Baba, she said, you are different now. You smile more. You are happy. Arif smiled gently. Yes, Mariam. Life is changing. But it is not only because of money. It is because of hope and hard work. And because sometimes helping others brings blessings we cannot see at once. Bilal, who was listening quietly, hugged his father. I want to work hard like you, Baba, he said. Arif held both children close. You will, he said softly. Always be kind, always be honest, and you will find your way. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Arif's hard work and honesty did not go unnoticed. Kamran trusted him with more responsibilities, and soon Arif was supervising a small team. He taught them the skills he had learned and reminded them to work with care and patience. The workers respected him, not because he was wealthy, but because he was fair, hardworking, and kind. One afternoon, Kamran called Arif into his office. You have done very well, he said. I want to offer you a permanent position with a steady salary. You will be able to provide for your family and plan for the future. Arif's eyes filled with tears, but he smiled. Thank you, sir, he said quietly. I will not forget what you have done for me. Kamran shook his hand firmly. No, Arif, you deserve this. You earned it by being yourself. Arif returned home that evening with a lighter step than ever before. Amina ran to him with a smile. What happened? She asked. Arif embraced her. Everything is changing, he said. We do not have to worry anymore. The children can study well. We can live better, but most importantly, we can live with hope. Mariam and Bilal jumped around him, laughing and shouting with joy. That night, Arif sat with his family, holding their hands. For the first time in many years, he felt complete peace. He thought about the rainy night when he had helped the stranger. If he had stayed home cold and tired, nothing would have changed. If he had refused to help, life would have remained the same. But because he chose kindness, his life and the lives of his children had been transformed. Months passed, and Arif's family continued to flourish. He saved money for Mariam's school fees and Bilal's books. They repaired the roof completely and even painted the walls of the house. Life became easier, yet Arif remained humble. He never forgot the nights of struggle, the empty stomachs, and the hard work that had taught him patience and endurance. One day, Kamran visited Arif's home. He brought gifts for the children and praised Amina for keeping the family together. You built a home full of love, he said. Money and comfort are easy to give. Love and care are harder, and you have both. Arif smiled. Thank you, sir. But it was not me alone. We all help each other in our family, and sometimes kindness comes from unexpected places. Kamran nodded. Indeed it does. Remember that. That rainy night reminded me that helping others is the greatest reward. Now you are helping many through your work. Arif's heart felt full. He looked at his children playing in the yard, their laughter echoing through the air. He knew that their future would be bright because of honesty, hard work, and love. And he knew that life's true wealth was not only in money, but in kindness, courage, and the ability to never give up. Years later, Arif often told this story to Mariam and Bilal as they grew older. He told them how a small act of kindness on a rainy night had changed his life. He reminded them to always help others, to be patient, and to be honest. No matter how hard life seemed, Mariam became a teacher. helping children in need, and Bilal became an engineer, building machines to help factories grow. Both children remembered their father's lessons, and both carried the spirit of kindness and honesty in everything they did. Arif continued to work at Kamran's company, always humble, always willing to help, always reminding himself of the night when his life changed forever. He had gone from being a poor man struggling for survival to a respected worker, a loving father, and a man full of hope. And he never forgot that it all began because he stopped, in the rain, to help a stranger. That single choice had brought him a lifetime of blessings, joy, and a family that could thrive. Life had changed forever, but Arif remained the same in heart. Kind, honest, and always ready to help those in need.